Alright, so here we are with Wigglytuff, finally getting this showcase out. It's been a very long time coming, but finally it is here. So today we're obviously going to be covering Wigglytuff over here. With all of the changes we got to PvP, specifically a few moves and that dreadful switch mechanic that's now gone, Wigglytuff ended up becoming an amazing pick for Jungle Cup, and it really did shake up the entire meta for a few reasons, but I'm going to get into all of that. I'm going to give you the full details on Wigglytuff. So how I'm going to structure this video, basically I'm going to go over all of the really basic information like movesets and all that stuff. I like typing as well, and then I'm going to go into its role in the meta. We'll go back to my meta infographic. Made a slight edit to it actually just to highlight some of the things I want to talk about. After we go over its role in the meta and exactly why it's so great for this cup, we're going to check out some of the breakpoints and review some matchups as well. So that's all going to just contextualize it into the actual meta so you can kind of understand what I mean when I talk about its role a bit more. After we get into all that nitty-gritty stuff, we're just going to check out some battles, and then I'm going to give you a recap of everything. Probably do like a Reddit write-up or something too, but yeah. That's how the video is going to go. So the set you're going to be running on Wigglytuff, this wonderful fairy normal type, is going to be Charm, obviously. That's the whole reason why it's so great. You're going to run Charm and then Ice Beam and Play Rough. I think Ice Beam is actually a 55 energy move. Play Rough is 60 energy. So it's basically got Azu's set. They charge pretty much at a very similar rate. So you basically get Play Rough immediately after Ice Beam. Its movesets are interesting, at least its charge moves. But honestly, you're not really going to be using them all that much, just because with Wigglytuff, you primarily rely on that Charm damage to get the job done. And with Charm, it can literally just roll through an entire team. It's just so overwhelming for some Pokemon to have to go against. Incredibly powerful move. It's comparable to like a Confusion, but more so Razor Leaf. Just a crazy strong hit with pretty meh energy gains, but its damage just totally overcompensates for that low energy. It's a great Pokemon with this move, and I expect Charm to do a lot of things for just the general Great League, with Pokemon like Clefable getting it, for example. It's definitely going to shake up a lot of different things. The first place we're seeing it make a huge difference is, of course, Jungle Cup. So that's pretty much the basic information on Wigglytuff. What I want to do next is I kind of want to go over its role a bit more. I feel like a lot of people there's basically two camps I'm seeing. A lot of people are just completely overhyping Wigglytuff, and then you have another group that's just completely disappointed by it. Probably because they're feeding into the general idea of what the hype group is saying. But I really do think both of those groups don't really fully understand what Wigglytuff is supposed to do. So what I want to do is properly discuss that and then give you a new perspective. And I think with that new perspective, you guys will maybe understand why Wigglytuff is so great. It's not because it's a destructive force and beats everything in this cup. That's not at all what it does. What it does is that it brings a huge sense of balance to this cup. Although the meta has certainly evolved to completely stomp it out, but without it, there would be a lot of other things we're seeing that were very common in the pre-Charm era, we'll call it. Okay, yeah, so to properly explain what I mean, I'm going to transition you over to the actual graphic, so you have a visual and a better representation to see what Wigglytuff is actually doing and how its interactions kind of played a part in shaping the meta. So let's go ahead and check out the new graphic, the updated graphic, I should say. So I'm actually trying a new setup right now. What I normally do is I'll just screen capture my entire screen. That way you can see my mouse and it makes it a little bit easier for your eyes to follow. When I record like that, it's really hard to edit because the files end up being so huge that my Premiere just constantly crashes as I try to edit. So I'm trying something new. I'm just recording straight into Premiere with outtakes into the simulation video, so I'm doing those like separately as we go along. So you're not going to be able to follow along with like my mouse, so I'm going to try to do a better job at just explaining to you exactly what I'm looking at when I'm looking at it. So I hope this works out a bit better, because this should theoretically save me a lot of time on editing. It's to the point where anytime I cut the clips that end up being really long, if I make any cut to it, the whole thing crashes and I have to reload my entire Premiere, and it's a lot of time that I waste doing it. So with this, I'm hoping to edit these quicker in the future and right now, and get them out to you a lot quicker as well. But that's enough of my ramble. Let's just get into the actual focus of Wigglytuff now. Okay, so yeah, going back to that point I was kind of talking about, where I feel like there's a lot of overhype, but also a lot of disappointment on Wigglytuff. I think that's largely just because people are kind of misrepresenting, you know, they're not really understanding the particular role it fits in the cup. Again, it's not supposed to run through this entire cup. It's supposed to bring balance to the cup. So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, it's a little easier if we look at the actual chart here. So prior to Wigglytuff, we had Vigoroth and Noctowl basically being a perfect coverage duo. Together, there was nothing that could beat both of them. We did have Alolan Raichu, which could beat Noctowl and tie Vigoroth, so check Vigoroth, but we didn't have anything that could reliably beat both. Wigglytuff, you know, maybe doesn't consistently beat Vigoroth 100% of the time because it has some trouble switching in, but it does what Alolan Raichu did, or still does, but better. On top of that, it has a ton of positive matchups. It can basically beat something from every one of these groups you see on the screen, but also loses to something in this group. So it can't completely dominate any one of them, but it's not completely dominated by any one of them either. Its biggest feature that it has going for it is the fact that it broke that Vigoroth and Noctowl duo. If you look at that, because Noctowl loses to Wigglytuff, there's been a shift immediately there, with Fortress being actually viable. Whereas before it was just straight up a worse Noctowl sub, or a decent Noctowl sub actually, but it lost to Noctowl, so there was little reason to actually choose it over Noctowl. But now, because of Wigglytuff, it is a clear answer. You'll see that trend happen a lot actually, where there's things in these groups that are now much more prominent and better picks than their counterparts, just because they have a better Wigglytuff matchup. All the things that beat Wigglytuff in these groups have slowly pushed themselves, or rather pulled themselves out of being around the same tier usage of all the other picks. Like, if we check out the Bucks, Vespiquen, Scyther, and Heracross are gone basically. You're pretty much exclusively seeing Venomoth and Beedrill now, because of that Wigglytuff matchup. Looking at the Electrics, you don't see the Chews anymore. You barely see the Rocks. You're pretty much just seeing Magnezone, Magneton, and Lantern. Those have the better Wigglytuff matchup. The thing with Wigglytuff is the things that it beats, it runs through. The things that beat it, only a few of them reliably beat it. And then the things that don't reliably beat it are very susceptible to that charm damage even still. It's just basically a very powerful balancing force for this meta. Yeah, so it's not really meant to run through everything in this cup. I mean, there's things that it definitely can, like Vespiquen, it can just totally outrun that. But what it's really here to do is bring a sense of balance. There's certain things that are just going to be better picks because they can offer a lot more for you in terms of that Wigglytuff coverage. That's not to say a lot of these other picks are bad, like even though Vespiquen and Heracross are pretty much put under by the other bugs because of Wigglytuff beating them, they still have really great niches, like they're two of the best Vigoroth answers. But now they have to be a lot more mindful of Wigglytuff. You're going to have to support it with your teammates. The meta shifted basically to completely oppress Wigglytuff, so now it's kind of hard to use it, just because people are basically running 2 of 3 of any Magnezone or Tawn, Lantern, Venusaur, or Fortress. Every team, or Beedrill too, sorry. Every team has at least 2 of those now, so it's a lot harder for Wigglytuff to be around. But if people weren't running that, and more people picked up Wigglytuff as a result, Wigglytuff would just overblow everything, so it's definitely put a lot of things down. The most important thing is that it can pretty much beat a Vigoroth and a Noctowl, and that's amazing for this cup. So yeah, while Wigglytuff isn't the nuke for everything in the meta, it's not Vigoroth 2.0, it's more or less the balance bringer. It's put so many things into check and forced people's teams to adjust. Now some of you may not have made any adjustments, but I'm going to leave that up to basically one of two things. Either you were already good versus Wigglytuff, or now you're weak to it. It's something that you definitely have to keep in mind now, and you had to give your team a second look after seeing what it can do. If you're running a team with no Beedrill, Venomoth, Venusaur, or Fortress, or just one of those, also including Megazone, Megaton, and Lantern, you're probably weak to Wigglytuff, and it's going to be able to run through your team if given the chance, and you're going to have that chance a lot more often versus a team without many answers to it. Charm's done it a lot of favors, needless to say. Yeah, so going back to my initial kind of point, I feel like there's a lot of overhype and disappointment. Because on the one hand, the people overhyping it may be inclined to believe that it destroys the entire meta. It beats a huge chunk of that, but the reality is that the meta has evolved now to include so many of the things that do beat Wigglytuff over the ones that lose to it. So people buying into that hype are using it in this meta, not realizing that the whole meta shifted to put it down basically. So it's not that Wigglytuff is a bad pick, it's just that it's forced people to use the things that beat it. So obviously in a climate where everything's there to just hurt you, it's going to be hard to thrive. But even still, it's able to come out of that and still be usable, because there's very few things that hard check it or hard counter it. So I guess that's enough explaining the role and what it does. I want to actually go into the graphic now to give you more of a context. So I did put it up. I'm going to leave the newer graphic up, but you can check my other video out as well. I'll link that one and the initial impression video so you get a full understanding for the chart. So I don't want to go over the chart too much more, but basically I added an indicator, and this is what I actually changed as well. But if you look at Wigglytuff up in the corner over there, it has a black star over its head. Now if you look across the infographic, anything that also has that black star, that's something that can beat Wigglytuff. If it doesn't have that black star, Wigglytuff is going to beat it. And a lot of the times it's going to beat that thing pretty bad, just because charm damage will overrun it and overwhelm it actually. So what I changed, I added a border, or rather an outline, to some of the black stars, like the one on Fortress, Beedrill, and Venusaur I think are the only ones that I did it for. Oh, and Victreebel. I added sort of a highlight basically. Those are the things that counter Wigglytuff. Anything else, so like Venomoth for example, that's a check. And I'm going to get into that when I review the matchups with you so you can clearly see it, but just to give you a quick rundown, those are the things that will basically give you a win for sure versus Wigglytuff. But the other things are susceptible to being run over by charm. So yeah, that's basically the only change I actually made. I kind of moved Beedrill Star so you can see the outline a bit better, but it's still kind of hard to see. So yeah, now that you know that, look at the graphic. All the things with the black star, except for like Noctowl, that's one of the exceptions, it's still being run. Those are the things that you're mostly seeing now. So you got the Megs, Lantern, Beedrill, Venomoth, Venusaur, more so Venusaur than Victreebel, and Fortress. Those are things that have just all of a sudden been very high in usage, and you should notice that in your scrims. Maybe not so much at your local cups that you may have recently attended, but those are basically the things that have been influenced by Wigglytuff because they do offer you coverage. It's harder to run something else because if someone does run Wigglytuff, it's going to run through that, right? Wigglytuff, not a destroyer of everything, but a balance bringer. Something that broke the famous duo in this cup, Vigoroth and Noctowl, better than anything else could. Much better than Alolan Raichu. I actually initially just straight up swapped Alolan Raichu for Wigglytuff on my team because it did what I was aiming with Alolan Raichu to do, but a bit better, and boasted some other matchups that were great, like Vespiquen for example. Okay, so with the things that it beats, the things that don't have a black star, I don't think I'm going to spend too much time reviewing those matchups for you. It's pretty self-explanatory and you can check out the sims, but basically Wigglytuff is going to run through them. A lot of the times it doesn't even need to use charge moves or Punish Shield. Obviously energy advantages do play a difference there, and Wigglytuff doesn't generally like to take charge moves because its defense is low, although it does have exceptionally high HP and really high attack, but its defense kind of balances it a bit. But yeah, generally those things with Black Star, it just runs through. The more interesting matchups that I do want to cover is I want to look at the things that have the Black Star and give you a better idea of how those matchups work out. So we're going to start out with the hard answers to Wigglytuff. So we're going to look at Fortress, Venusaur, and Beedrill. Okay, so I'm actually getting a little bit ahead of myself. Before I get into those actual matchups, like Fortress and all of that, I first want to go over the breakpoints. There's 3 I'm going to cover. One is with Vigoroth, Noctowl, and Lantern. Actually, really I'm just going to cover 2. I'll kind of go over Lantern as we go through that matchup because I don't really find it that useful. And even Noct, I don't really think it's that important either. Really the main focus is Vigoroth. So let's go through the Vigoroth breakpoint first. I'm just going to set the sim for you right over here. The basics, don't have to have Bulldoze in there. I'll leave it like this for now too. So versus Vigoroth, there is a Charm breakpoint versus Ideal Vigoroth. Not Max Defense Vigoroth, that's a little different. So I believe the breakpoint specifically is at 119.1 defense, and that's versus Ideal Vigoroth, which is 115.1 defense. Vigoroth can get more defense than that. If we actually bump it up to max on the sims here, gets a 117.6. You can see that right here. The thing with that breakpoint is though, if you do push for it, you lose bulk points, so you lose some HP, and that actually makes it so Vigoroth will lose this matchup. So we're going to ignore that because it's obviously entirely irrelevant if Vigoroth is going to lose the matchup trying to achieve it. But basically just pushes it so that Wigglytuff theoretically would need more attack to get the charm damage it needs, but it actually works out in practice where Vigoroth doesn't survive long enough to get to third body slam that would allow it to beat Wigglytuff. So let's go back to just Ideal Vigoroth. So yeah, looking at Ideal Vigoroth, the precise value is 119.9. It's kind of sad because my personal shiny Wigglytuff does not hit it. I'll show you my shiny one. So you have a reference for it. So 28.5. I'm at 119.1. So if I run this sim, you'll see that I actually don't win. Vigoroth manages to win with just 4 HP. Because it's getting 3 body slams here. But if we tweak the IVs a little bit, okay, yeah, here we go. So we tweak the IVs a little bit, still keeping the Ideal Vigoroth. So now what happens if we run it? You'll see that Wigglytuff ends up winning. That's because Vigoroth can't survive long enough to get to that third body slam. Or actually, sorry, it's 14 charm damage. I don't know if I said 15 or not, but you want to be doing 14 charm damage to Vigoroth. In that case, you can beat any Vigoroth. That includes Ideal and even that max defense Vigoroth, as I said before, because what ends up happening actually, they can show you if you maximize defense here. This Vigoroth can't beat this Wigglytuff, even though it's not going to have the charm damage it needs. So it still ends up losing. Charm's doing 13 damage now. It just lacks the HP it needs. There may actually be like a sweet spot somewhere in there, but don't know if it's going to be worth finding that one particular Vigoroth. In general, you can assume that if your Wigglytuff has 120 attack, it's going to be able to beat any Vigoroth. There is actually an exception to this. Vigoroth can beat this Wigglytuff, even if it's not an Ideal Vigoroth. Let me show you this. So here it is. How it works basically is Vigoroth, this is pretty much only guaranteed in the lead setting, and it is actually overrun by Wigglytuff just shielding twice. Then your Vigoroth has nothing it can do. But how it works, as Vigoroth in the lead, regardless of your IVs, as long as you have like a decent amount of HP, you're not like 130 or something outrageous, what you would do is you build into your 10th counter. After that, you have 2 body slams, and if you do it here, you can actually negate a charm from coming through if you do it back to back. What that allows you to do is actually build enough energy to get to a 3rd body slam, and that wins you the match. Narrowly though. And of course, again, Wigglytuff, if it shields twice, you can't win at all. So that's how you would outplay this as a Vigoroth. But even still, as a Wigglytuff, you're definitely going to want minimum 120 attack. You don't need more than that, as I showed you with the max defense Vigoroth, but you for sure need this 120 attack. And that's basically the breakpoint versus Vigoroth. Okay, so the next thing to cover would be this Noctowl breakpoint. So there actually is a way for Noctowl to get to 7 wing attack damage as opposed to 6. I think default it's the 6, yeah. It can get to 7, and that can kind of turn things around in this matchup. But it largely depends on Wigglytuff's defense. So I'm just going to tweak this a bit. So yeah, I just tweaked the IVs a little bit on this Noctowl to push up its attack a bit more, and then I lowered Wigglytuff's defense a little more. Basically, with this, if you run the sim over here, instead of losing, Noctowl ends up actually tying Wigglytuff, and in some cases, depending on the IVs of both, it can actually win. It's a marginal win, but it's something you have in your favor here. Of course, this is actually pretty easily outran by Wigglytuff. If your Wigglytuff has about 70 defense, it makes this a little useless on Noctowl. Noctowl can push higher and higher to get that breakpoint once you have 70 or higher defense. But what ends up happening is Noctowl loses too much ball and still ends up losing, similar to the max defense Vigoroth thing. I think Wigglytuff can actually just totally upload if it pushes somewhere between 73.5 to 73.8 defense and higher. It can just totally blow past any of Noctowl's breakpoints. But I did test the sim out versus my personal Wigglytuff versus a max attack Noctowl, and my Wigglytuff ended up winning even though it was getting the breakpoint. I would show it to you, but I don't want to spend too much time in this video on like my last showcases. Default Noct is about 105 attack, so if you do push to Noct's max, which is like 113, it does get pretty crazy. You're going to lose a lot of bulk. So the simple takeaway here is if you have about 70 defense on your Noctowl, or rather your Wigglytuff, you're going to be fine versus Noctowl as well. And if the Noctowl tries to outrun you in that sense, it'll still lose. Again, if you really wanted to, you could just shield twice here too, and then have Wigglytuff just breeze by this entire matchup. So main takeaways, from Vigoroth, you're going to want 128 attack on your Wigglytuff. And from Noctowl, you want 7 defense. If you get around there, you're going to be good. And again, even though my Wigglytuff is only 119.1, it still beats a large chunk of Vigoroths that are like 1 defense off of by Teal's defense, so you can definitely play around with it. At best case, Vigoroth wins very narrowly with like 0 energy versus Wigglytuff too, so it's a good matchup for you. Yeah, that's basically the Noctowl element. This is why I felt it to be kind of underwhelming. It's really easy just to get a Wigglytuff that hits both of these two. Like I got one from Hatch that can basically do it. Yeah, so I actually originally planned on just covering that Vigoroth matchup first, but I kind of went over it in that breakpoint section. So I'm going to leave Vigoroth and Noctowl out of this now. Now we're going to start looking at the actual answers to Wigglytuff so you can see how it generally performs. First up, we're going to look at Fortress, then we'll probably look at B, and then Venusaur. Then we'll start to look at the checks. So with these matchups, I'm generally going to be looking at a Wigglytuff with 70 defense and 120 attack, just to give fair credit to the actual breakpoints you want to be reaching. So you will see that throughout the video. So Fortress is an excellent answer to Wigglytuff. It can pretty much beat Wigglytuff 100% of the time. I mean, if we check out the match, it doesn't even really have to burn that shield. If you take this hit, you're still going to come out on top. You would just apply too much pressure with these heavy slams, although Bug Bite is resisted. One thing to note, heavy slam does 135 damage. That's just over half, but it's not a one-shot. So be mindful of that, because Wigglytuff can wear you down quite a bit with these charms. So you gotta be careful. But yeah, Fortress is something that can handle Wigglytuff even if it chooses to burn both shields on you. Close, definitely close. It's very close to making you burn another shield, but you only have to burn one shield. It has to burn two to get this far. So very good for Fortress. It ends up really close, so you do have to be careful like in the late game if they manage to save two shields, but Fortress is one of the better options to handle Wigglytuff because of this. A lot of its counters actually just straight up lose in the two shield. So among the ranks of great Wigglytuff answers, Beedrill joins this as well. So Beedrill pretty much just wins completely with Poison Jab damage, so I might even consider it a little better than Fortress. It's probably actually the hardest answer to Wigglytuff. Let's get the sims to Beedrill over here. Yeah, so again, I'm still using that Wigglytuff with the 120 and the 70. So if you run this sim, it's really good. It's showing a bait, but honestly, if you just get rid of X-Scissor in the one shield, you got this matchup. You don't even need to use that second Sludge Bomb. It's close though, Wigglytuff almost has a charge move, so you almost have to burn that shield, but this is a really good matchup for you that forces Wigglytuff to shield. If we check out the two shield now here too, it literally just doesn't even get that far. Poison Jab just completely obliterates Wigglytuff. I think you can even farm to 2 Sludge Bombs. But this is an insane matchup for you with Beedrill. Beedrill is by far the best answer to Wigglytuff, and it's just completely oppressive versus it. It's also a really good Vigoroth check, so Beedrill stock goes way up with the rise of Wigglytuff for sure. And you see it on a lot of teams, at least I do in my scrims, but yeah, it's one of the few things that can win regardless of the shield setting for Wigglytuff. All it has to do is knock it down with Poison Jabs. Yeah, Beedrill's excellent for dealing with Wigglytuff. It doesn't even allow it to get to the 2 shield scenario. So here we're looking at the final of the really good answers to Wigglytuff, the counters, and then we'll move into the checks after this. Venusaur is an absolutely amazing one as well. It has that poison typing similar to B, and those Sludge Bombs again, so it's going to be really great versus Wigglytuff. Not quite on the same level as Beedrill, but definitely way up there. It basically doesn't give Wigglytuff a chance at all. Also, quick shout out, I finally managed to get a shiny Frenzy Plant Venusaur. My trade did fall through with the local, but on Entei Day I managed to find someone that had an extra one. Gave them a shiny Metagross for it. I think they wanted to bell them, but I felt kind of bad doing that, so I just gave them one of my shiny Meteor Mash Metagrosses for it. And I'm so happy that I have it now. It's awesome. It's actually just like a straight upgrade to the Venusaur I'm using. But let's not ramble and get too off topic here. Looking back at Venusaur. So let's check out how this matchup plays. So Venusaur does quite amazingly. Showing a bait here, but it's kind of like B where you don't actually have to do that. You can just Sludge Bomb twice and it's like the exact same margin. You do amazingly. And of course, you don't have to shield, although Wigglytuff is very close to a charge move, so if you switch in, you may have to burn a shield here. Let's see what happens if we try to take it to the 2 shield. It is pretty close. You see, it's more or less in line with like Fortress's matchup, but Wigglytuff is pretty far from the second charge move, so it's going to have to shield twice to beat you, or just to get you low rather, not even beat you. That charm damage really does stick. I'm curious, I don't remember if you bait, does it get much better? It gets a little better, you could just actually straight Frenzy Plant. Yo, that does a ton of damage. Wigglytuff isn't really keen on taking any charge moves from anything, to be completely honest, unless it's like a bug, X-Scissor, or something easy to take, where it's resisted, because its defense isn't the greatest. But yeah, Venusaur just bodies Wigglytuff and doesn't really give it a chance. You do have to be careful though, Wigglytuff gets access to Ice Beam. And Ice Beam can really hurt your Venusaur specifically, if you check it out. It does a little over 2/3 HP, so this will definitely obliterate your Venusaur if you let it go through. So you gotta be mindful of that for sure. But Venusaur is an excellent answer to Wigglytuff, even still. Alright, so now we're finally moving into the checks as opposed to the counters. So the previous three, Fortress, Beedrill, and Venusaur, I would consider counters just because they can switch in. No, actually, maybe not really switch in, but they can just handle Wigglytuff a lot better because they can beat it in a 2-shield scenario. Everything else we're going to check going forward can't because they're just not going to want to stand near that charm damage for too long. First one up is Venomoth. It's got to be Legacy Poison Fang. If you don't have this, you can use a Dustox, which I think actually does perform slightly better than Venomoth, mostly because of its bulk versus Wigglytuff specifically. So that's a great option as well if you don't have this Venomoth option here. But this matchup's pretty cool, if you're being honest. Really good one-shield matchup for Moth, where you don't even have to shield some of the time, so let's run this. You can see you can just get this double Poison Fang. It's basically got these two moves ready, so if you switch in, you're going to have to burn a shield. But yeah, it has to block these Poison Fangs because they just do a whole ton of damage to that Wigglytuff. So it's a really great matchup for the one shield. There's no doubting that. But it does get a little dicey if you have the 2-shield situation. So let's give Wigglytuff 2 shields. You'll see that now Venomoth actually is going to lose to the Wigglytuff in the 2-shield. It's relatively close though. You basically have a third Poison Fang ready. So you could try to piggyback. After you do one Poison Fang, then you can try to piggyback your next one off, and then you actually may be able to get the second one off. That's an option for you to consider. But if Wigglytuff does shield twice, it's going to look a little bad for you as the Venomoth. It's just that charm damage is chipping you down so quick. It is pretty far from another charge move though, and it's choosing to burn both from you, so even if you lose this matchup, if you can bring something in that can take it out relatively quick, they'll have no shield and you'll be up a shield. But Venomoth has something kind of cool going for it, where it's going to be able to beat Beedrill and Venusaur specifically really well too because of that confusion damage. So I do really actually like it in this meta in general, but that's going to take away a bit from the Wigglytuff showcase. Maybe I'll cover that in another video. So for this next one, I'm kind of going to group two things together. I'm going to group Magneton and Magnezone together because they're functionally very similar in this matchup. It's going to be close to Venomoth really, but let's fix the Sims here. I just realized I didn't adjust the Sims, so 1 second. Alright, that's a little better. So yeah, again, it's going to be kind of similar to Venomoth here, where in the one shield, you're golden. You pretty much have a really good chance. You're going to win this one shield matchup, no doubt. And it's pretty far from a charge move actually, so however, if we take it to the 2 shield, it's again similar to Venomoth. Wigglytuff is just going to outrun you, and it ends with a charge move ready, so it'll burn 2, you burn nothing, but then you're going to get a shield forced into whatever you bring in basically. You're kind of close to another Magna Bomb, a little bit far off, so if you have an energy lead, this may still be good for you, but yeah, Wigglytuff is just going to be chipping you down so hard with those charms. And I've actually been in this play a lot where I've seen a weakened land near the end, and then I'll bring in my Wigglytuff and just chip down that Magneton to completion. Magnezone's kind of similar in this regard too. It actually pretty much has the same matchup, but a little worse when you're looking at it and Magneton. So in the 2 shield, it's still going to lose. And then in the 1 shield, it's not really any better. Although Wigglytuff is using a charge move here, it doesn't have to. You won't get to your 3rd wild charge on time. Yeah, it just ends a little worse than Magneton would in this situation. So yeah, they're pretty similar in this regard to beating Wigglytuff. They're checks at best, but if Wigglytuff burns 2 shields, it's going to end up winning this matchup. It's worse than the Venomoth because the Venomoth can try to piggyback to win. But yeah, you got to watch out for this like lead situation basically. You can pull yourself out of it because Wigglytuff is going to have to burn no shields, and you can try to play out of it if you have another check or counter to Wiggly it back. But that's basically how this matchup plays out. Alright, this is the last one of the checks, and this matchup actually does have a breakpoint that I was kind of talking about earlier. So Charm can go from 15 to 14 damage. Honestly, it doesn't really matter, it's actually more focused on the HP for Lantern, but some Lanterns, basically if they have enough HP, regardless of the damage you're doing, Wigglytuff can just beat a lot of Lanterns. I tested the Sims versus like Wigglytuffs that were hitting the higher breakpoint and lower ones, but if Lantern decides to try to push too high to get the defense breakpoint, it actually ends up just losing because it loses too much health. Similar again to that Vigoroth and Noctowl situation. What you really want on Lantern is 197 or more HP. I'm going to show you something. Just the one shield situation. So Lantern wins with 0 energy and 1 HP versus this Wigglytuff. Actually curious to just if we don't Ice Beam at all. Yeah, it's more or less the same situation, but if you have 1 less HP, and I'll show you that, looks like I have to go to 10, but if I show you that now, you lose, because you can't survive to get that Thunderbolt, unless you have like extra energy. It's really sad actually, there's a lot of Lanterns out there that don't have this cutoff. It's pretty easy to miss. Ideal obviously does have it, but it's pretty close. You're going to need a high HP Lantern to pull this off. The troubling thing with it though, is even if you do have it, you win with just a couple points of HP and 0 energy. So your Lantern's in no position to do anything else after this matchup. And it even does have to burn a shield because that extra damage is going to allow Wigglytuff to win. So, not the greatest matchup. And what Wigglytuff can do, Wigglytuff can just not use any charge moves, and shield twice, and there's nothing any Lantern can do. It's going to end pretty bad for you actually. Wigglytuff's going to end with a ton of energy. So for me, I actually kind of struggle to even consider Lantern a check just because of how easy it is to miss that 197 HP mark and lose to these Wigglytuffs. And if you try too hard to push for defense, you definitely are lacking here. Same with attack. Kind of sucks for Lanterns that have been pushing to hit the attack weighted breakpoint on ideal or bulky Gravelers to get out of that tie, but yeah, if they try for that, they're probably going to lose to Wigglytuffs. Yeah, super attack weighted Lanterns can actually also take 16 damage from Charm and then just totally lose the one shield without any chance. So, you know, it's not the greatest matchup for Lantern. If Wigglytuff's down a ton of health, it's better. But Lantern's probably the worst check out of everything versus Wigglytuff. But it's up there nonetheless. Yeah, so that's basically the simulation portion of the video. I hope you guys kind of have a better understanding of how these matchups work. Just to go over this infographic again, if you see that highlight, it's something that Wigglytuff can't beat in that 2-shield scenario. It doesn't have a highlight like on, Venomoth or the Megs. If you shield twice, you have a good shot at winning those matchups. So I hope that gives you sort of an insight into when to actually shield twice when you're Wiggly. You don't always have to do it. Sometimes, again, it is better to lose matchups, gain an advantage elsewhere, especially if Wigglytuff is chipping down something so dramatically. But yeah, I'm going to leave, obviously, a link to this. I'm going to try to switch to Iamgur. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but I've gotten some requests to switch to that instead of Box because it's not really mobile friendly. I don't know if the other source, the Iamgur, is going to keep the image quality quite as nicely as Box does. So I'm looking for feedback there, but yeah, I think I've covered the matchups and the Sims very well. What I want to do now is, like I do in my showcase videos, I want to take you to some battles so you can actually see Wigglytuff perform. There is a match where I actually have Wigglytuff sweep an entire team. That's pretty cool to see, so we're going to go ahead and jump into these battles, and then I'll give you the narrations, and then after that we'll do some closing little thoughts and recap as well. So let's finally jump into these battles, and we'll wrap up this Wigglytuff showcase shortly after that.
Alright, so let's start off these battles. We're actually going to go ahead and lead with Venomoth and Magneton and Wigglytuff in the back. We unfortunately get caught with the knocked out lead, so I'm just going to farm up a Confusion here and then switch out into my my Wigglytuff here. And he's actually going to bring in his Venusaur. So what I wanted to show in this matchup really was just the pressure Wigglytuff can put on. He can switch in his Venusaur, but at a cost. He's going to have to burn a shield because I can get to an Ice Beam pretty reliably. So he will burn that shield actually, but you'll be able to see just how much Wigglytuff can chip down this Venusaur. I get it to basically half health, and that allows me to get a decent advantage going forward. So now I'll bring back in the Venomoth, and then I'm just going to chip down his Venusaur with Confusion damage. So there we go. Chip him down as much as I can. I know Noct is coming back in, so I'm just going to go for a Poison Fang to be safe. Does an okay amount of damage, but then I'll switch right away into Magneton and just build up some energy. He has to switch in his own Wigglytuff, so this is pretty good for me. Go for a Magnet Bomb, and I did get a few Thunder Shocks extra here, so I can get to a second one pretty quickly before it gets to a charge move. And then we're just going to take out that Wigglytuff. A little bit of lag. Ever since they swapped back the system, I've been noticing a lot more lag lately. But yeah, anyways, so now he brings back in Knocked Out. He has no shield, so I'm just going to shield my Magneton. And then I'll get the energy I need to just discharge it. Take it down. So yeah, I really just wanted to show you that Wigglytuff can put on a crazy amount of pressure even against some of its checks with that matchup. But going into the next one, we're actually going to go ahead and use Wigglytuff in the lead with Venusaur and Vigoroth in the back. So let's see how this actually works out for us. So I lead that Wigglytuff and I actually catch the Mirror Wigglytuff, so this is kind of interesting. I believe his Wigglytuff either has, it's under the 70 defense threshold, or it just doesn't quite have enough HP. But you'll actually be able to see that my Wigglytuff wins the mirror. So really push for that 70 defense and try to get as much HP as you can out of it. But yeah, because I win the mirror, I have a play rough ready to go and I can pressure whatever comes in. I'm not really at a huge opportunity to be farmed either because I'm so low, but I will actually switch out Wigglytuff and bring in my Vigoroth. Really good matchup for me here. I farmed up a ton of energy now, so he brings in his own Vigoroth. He's at a huge disadvantage at this point. Has to burn another shield on me, but I can get to a second Body Slam before him. Do a huge chunk to his Vigoroth, and I could shield here if I really wanted to, but I decide that it's just Magneton in the back, so if I have two shields with Venusaur, I'll be more than fine. So I actually bring in my Venusaur and burn this first shield here. And then I'm just going to chip him down without Vine Whips, and all I have to do now is get to a Frenzy Plant, and then I win the match. Now the Wigglytuff mirror is interesting, to say the least. Really just push for as much bulk as you can fit in. Try not to go too far over 120 attack, because it's generally not going to be worth it for your bulk. So here we go, we lead Wigglytuff with Venomoth and Venusaur in the back this time around. I really do like Wigglytuff as a lead. You can often just switch it out to something that's safer, like I'm going to do here actually, and then just keep it alive in the back. So I'm actually going to try to build up a little bit of energy and chip him down. And then I'll switch out right on time into this, I think he goes for a Sludge Bomb. Yeah, so I made a really good switch there. And then I'm just trying to build up some energy. He switches in Vig, which isn't the greatest play to make. I overfarm a little bit, and then I go for a Poison Fang trying to bait. Don't get the shield, unfortunately. But I can get a second one pretty quick. That's going to do a nice amount of damage to the Vigoroth here. And And then I'm actually not going to shield, but Vigoroth chooses to use a ton of energy unnecessarily on me there. Now I can bring in Wigglytuff, chip down that Vigoroth to death with this charm damage, and I almost have an Ice Beam ready thanks to that farming I did previously. I'll go for an Ice Beam right away on this Venusaur now. Burn that final shield, and now I'm just going to wail on him with this charm damage. I have 2 shields, so of course I'll burn one of them. And now you'll get to see just how threatening Wigglytuff can be if your team is chipped down. I knock out the Venusaur now, and I still have a shield, and I'm almost at a play rough. Brings in Noctowl so I can get to this Ice Beam. Do a whole ton of damage to that Noctowl, and then just continue to chip it down with these charms, and go for a sweep actually. Wigglytuff is quite a threat if you are not prepared for it, or if you let your guard down. So jumping into the next battle, we're going to go ahead and continue with the Wigglytuff lead with Magneton and Venomoth in the back. So we lead Wigglytuff into the Beedrill. Pretty bad matchup for us, we almost have to switch out. So I choose to switch out into Venomoth. I wanted to kind of preserve Magneton in this case. It's hard to switch it in, especially with Vigoroth flying around everywhere. But he goes for an X-Scissor. I knew it was an X-Scissor because it came out way too quick. I'm just trying to chip it down and get some energy. He switches in his Magneton, so here I'll just go straight for a Silver Wind. Do a ton of damage, and then I'll actually just go for a second one now too. I don't really want to bait, I just kind of want to get a shield or do as much damage as I can. But he doesn't shield and lets me take out that Magneton. He'll bring back in B, and I get another confusion on it, so I basically render it useless. And now that both of his Wigglytuff answers have been dealt with, I'll bring back in Wigglytuff, clean up that Beedrill, and then he brings in a Vigoroth, so I have this match pretty much in the bag. Just keep chipping it down with charms. I don't even have to go for a charge move at this point. Shield this Body Slam coming in. Gets a second one actually, so gonna shield this too. Just keep chipping him down, and we take that match. So jumping into the next one, we're actually going to lead with Noctowl this time and keep Wigglytuff and Venomoth together. I really like that pair specifically, the Wigglytuff and Venomoth, because they do actually cover each other quite well. So I lead Noct into Vig. This is a situation I've been in countless times. The play I typically make is I'll just farm and piggyback him until that first Body Slam comes out. But it looks like he's doing basically the same thing, so I decide just to go for a Sky Attack here. Get a shield. I know I can take a single Body Slam, but I want to keep Noctowl a little healthy, so block this first Body Slam because I want to go for another Sky Attack and do some chip here. Do a ton of damage, and then he's going to actually get to another Body Slam on me, so I'll let this one come through. My plan here now is to just chip him down so I can bring in Wigglytuff or something and then clean him up. He decides to waste this last little bit of his energy and Body Slam my Noctowl. So now I can just bring in this Wigglytuff and start chipping him down with the charm damage. Slight energy advantage there. And Wigglytuff's barely taken any damage in return. Brings in Noctowl, which is not the greatest move for you to make. So here I am just wailing on it with these charms. I will shield the Sky Attack. And then I can get to this Ice Beam here. This is one of those matchups where you do actually kind of want to use your charge moves. You don't have to, but if you manage to land it, it's just going to take out that Noctowl earlier for you. Gets the Sky Attack, but I do survive through it, and then I can chip down this Noctowl. Wigglytuff is basically dead at this point now, so I'll switch out into Venomoth, into that Heracross. And now these confusions are going to put in the work for me. Get a Poison Fang just to finish it off. And then we'll take that game. You can't let Wigglytuff go unchecked. So here we go, I'm going to lead with a Magneton and keep Wigglytuff and Venomoth in the back. Magneton and Magnezone with Venomoth is a duo I absolutely like as well. They function pretty well together, so in testing I used those two with my Wigglytuff a lot and I really liked it. I think I prefer Magnezone a bit more, but you'll get to see some footage of that later. So we lead the Magneton into Noctowl. Excellent matchup for me. I decide to overcharge a bit because I thought he'd try to make a clever switch. Then I go for a Magnet Bomb and I switch out actually into my Wigglytuff, and then I just start knocking down this Heracross. Doesn't even get to a charge move. Brings in Fortress, so this isn't the greatest matchup now. What I want to do is just apply some pressure with the Play Rough. Do a nice chunk of damage there and then just keep wailing him down with charms. You'll see just how much damage this does. I decide that I'm going to let Wigglytuff go down at this point. It's already like basically taking out 2 Mons, so I can bring in my Magneton and farm up a little bit more energy and go for a discharge here. He does shield it, which is kind of silly in my opinion. I'm going to burn my first shield here, and because he's so low, I'll just chip him down with Thunder Shocks. Now I have a ton of energy and a shield over him, so this is going to be in my favor for sure. Noctowl comes back in and just gets obliterated by that discharge. I'll shield the Sky Attack coming in. And then I make a cheeky play and switch out to Venomoth just to finish him off with the Confusion. So for this next one, we're going to lead Wigglytuff and have Lantern actually with Venomoth in the back. Lantern here is subbing for that Magneton slot I like to run a lot of the time. I really do like Lantern actually as well with Wigglytuff and Venomoth. It's an incredibly tanky mon and it works really well with it. So we lead into Venusaur, which is unfortunate. So I'm immediately going to pull out and switch into my Venomoth here. He switches into Noctowl, so I'll just try to put on some pressure with these Poison Fangs. A little bit of a weird glitch there. Similar thing happened in my freestyle tournament earlier today actually. Couldn't really use any charge moves or tap anything, but it's alright. Just keep putting on this pressure with the Poison Fangs, and I do get a shield there. Yeah, you can see Moth is even able to put in a decent amount of work against Noctowl over here. I'll let him waste all that energy and take out my Venomoth. Now I can bring in Lantern. No issues here for me. I can just farm him down completely. Just like that. Now I'm very close to a Hydro Pump. So he brings back in Venusaur, which is the smart play. I'm going to have to shield here. And now what I want to do is get to a Hydro Pump and try to force a final shield. That way I can have Wigglytuff in a good position. The other alternative is he doesn't shield it and takes a ton of damage, so Wigglytuff can still come back in after this. So now Lantern's done more than enough. He's taken out the Wigglytuff counter here. So Wigglytuff will come in and just finish it off with a charm. His final mon is Vigoroth, and we've seen how this plays out. Vigoroth can actually come out of this on top if it plays correctly, but it's something that we recently discovered, so a lot of us didn't know how to do that play just yet, but because of that I can just wail on him with charms and I don't even have to go for a charge move. Just have to block this body slam right over here. And we'll take that match too. Jumping into the next one, we're going to go ahead and go with that Magneton lead again with Wigglytuff and Venomoth in the back. Yeah, I really like this 3 together specifically. They perform pretty well. I like it better with Zone because I feel like it's a better lead, but we catch that Noctowl again. So he's going to switch out immediately into that Venusaur. Here I kind of want to burn a shield if I can get it. So I go for a Magnet Bomb. And then I actually just switch out straight away into Venomoth. I know I can take anything from this Venusaur, so I just want to get a little bit of energy off of it now that he's basically let it die. And we'll take out the Venusaur. I have a Poison Fang ready to go. I'm expecting Noctowl to come back in. So yeah, I'll just go straight for a Poison Fang. Try to get some chip or maybe burn a shield. Don't get any of that. Keep going with the Confusion damage and then I can get to another Poison Fang. I actually undertapped that right there. With Confusion users, I feel like you really want to get a handle on undertapping. It's a very excellent technique you can learn. And look how low we get that Noctowl. I'm going to shield the Sky Attack, and then I actually switch straight away into Magneton trying to bait out another Sky Attack, and it looks like I do get it. so I'll just keep Wigglytuff alive in the back. He switches out that knocked out, but now it has no energy, and all I have to do is get a nice chip on this Vigoroth so that Wigglytuff can come in and clean up. He gets a nice amount of energy on me, unfortunately, but now I can bring back in Wigglytuff. I can take one Body Slam, so I'll let this one come through. And then I'll just keep chipping it down with these charms. Take out that Vigoroth. Now Noctowl comes back in, but it's already way too weak to handle my Wigglytuff, and we'll take that match as well. So jumping into the next one, we're going to go with that familiar 3. Wigglytuff, Venomoth, and an Electric, this time Lantern. We lead Wiggles into Fortress. So I know I have to get out of here, so I'm actually just going to switch right away into my Lantern here. Try to get off a little bit of energy on the Fortress. He switches in Vigoroth, so not the greatest matchup for me, but I'm just going to build up a little bit more energy. I know I can take a Body Slam pretty easily, so I'm not too worried about this first charge move coming in. Now I want to get a shield in return, so I'll go for a Thunderbolt here. Get that shield, which is great, and now I'm just going to keep chipping him down. I don't really want to give up an advantage because I know I have to deal with that Fortress somehow. So I'll let Lant go down right there, and then I can actually just bring in Wigglytuff again, chip him down. I decide that I'm not going to shield here because I wanted to save both shields for Fortress. And I'm about halfway on my energy now. So Fortress comes back in and I'm just desperately trying to chip it down. So I do burn another shield here. I'm hoping to just try to chip it down as much as I can. Get this Play Rough. Or actually that was my first shield I burned. But I land this Play Rough and do a huge chunk. Then I'm just trying to wail it down as much as I can with these charms. And look how much pressure I can put on. I'm actually able to knock out that Fortress because he didn't shield. So I'll bring in Venomoth now, and I do actually lose this matchup because I accidentally I go for the wrong move basically, but had I gone for Silverwind here I would have won. But what I wanted to show you with this matchup was just the amount of pressure and damage that Charm actually manages to rack up, even against something that it should lose to. Somehow I actually managed to beat that Fortress. I'm just short of a Silverwind, so I'm going to tank this Wild Charge. I should have just taken that initial Thunder Punch, made that risky play, but yeah, so we lose that game. Jumping into the final match, we have another Wigglytuff sweep, so I'm going to lead Noctowl with Wigglytuff and Magneton in the back. I lead Noct into Noct, so I'm just trying to gain any type of advantage here. I'm just going to try to piggy as much as I can. He goes for the Sky Attack first, I'll let it connect. Then I actually switch out into my Magneton with that banked energy on Noctowl. He brings in Vigoroth, so I'll go for a Magnet Bomb right away. Need to burn a shield or get some kind of advantage going. Get that shield, which is great. And I'm actually able to get to a second Magnet Bomb now. So I can do a nice amount of chip to this Vigoroth because he doesn't shield it. He is going to take down my Magneton, but now I can bring back in Noctowl with all that extra energy. I want to draw his final shield here. So we get that shield there, and then he's actually going to Body Slam my Noctowl. I don't shield, and I'm actually going to let him Body Slam me again. He should have just countered me down and farmed me, but I'll let him use all his energy. Now I can bring in Wigglytuff with 2 shields. Clean up that Vigoroth. Not a problem at all for Wigglytuff, this beast. He's going to switch in his Heracross, and I know it's not going to get to a single charge move, and I'll just destroy that thing. And now I have all this energy and a shield remaining. He brings back in Noctowl, and he does have a Sky Attack, so I'll block that right away. Burn a single shield on Wigglytuff and land this Ice Beam here. It's going to do a ton of damage to Noctowl, and actually be enough to knock it out. Wigglytuff with the sweep right there.
Alright, so yeah, that's gonna basically wrap up the battles there. I hope you guys enjoyed that and got a good feel for how Wigglytuff actually runs. It's really cool to use, especially if you can figure out a way to deal with its counters. I really like it as like sort of a false lead is what I'm gonna call it, where you lead and try to switch it out. Then basically with that kind of play, you want to wear down the enemy team and then bring Wigglytuff in at the end. You saw me do it a few times, but if you do that, you can basically clear out the entire team or whatever's left of it. It's really cool. So yeah, that's Wigglytuff. It's something that's brought a lot of balance to the cup. It's a really cool pick, and I definitely encourage some of you to try it out. It's hard to make it work in the meta the way it's shaped up with all the poison and steel types flying around now. So it's going to be difficult to bring in, but you know, if you can chip them down just enough, you can always bring Wigglytuff in to clean them up. As far as its checks and counters go, if I had to kind of rank them for you guys, I'm of course going to put Beedrill at the very top, but I also kind of want to put Venusaur and Fortress among that level, with Beedrill being a little bit better than both of them. After that, you're going to have like Magneton and Magnezone, with Venomoth as well, and then Lantern's probably just going to be at the very bottom of that list. But those would be the primary things you're looking at if you need to fill that Wigglytuff hole on your team. And I've kind of noticed a trend in what I believe to be the general format for a team building compositions now. Basically every team's going to have Vigoroth. They're going to have a slot dedicated for either Noctowl or Fortress. You're going to have one Wigglytuff check, so that's things like Venomoth, Beedrill, all that kind of stuff, anything to deal with Wigglytuff. Then you're going to have another slot that's a check to both Wigglytuff and Vigoroth, so specifically you'll be looking at Venusaur, Beedrill, and Venomoth there. I typically prefer to run Venusaur in that slot just because it has the best Lantern matchup, and it's a really good answer to Lantern. So the next slot is usually an Electric, so Magneton, Magnezone, or Lantern are the popular answers. And that last slot would be your flex. So that's where you could run Wigglytuff. You could run Heracross, Vespiquen, double Electric. You could double up on Fortress and Noctowl. In general, that's where you would kind of make that decision. But yeah, once again, Wigglytuff, thanks to that Charm buff, just has become an amazing addition to this meta. But it's important to recognize that its role here is not to just obliterate everything in the cup. Yeah, so I don't know if I've uploaded the practice videos before the showcase or after the showcase. I'm just exporting them right now, where I should be. I plan to actually pump them out before the showcase and just have them all done, but basically with this Wigglytuff video, if I don't put them out before, I'm going to have them after the showcase, and then with that, those will be the final early-ish, or at least a pre-Wig showcase, or sorry, those will be the final pre-Wig practice battles. So after that, we're going to be moving on to the complete Wigglytuff era. I have actually started my remote tournament, and I have a few battles for my freestyle tournament as well, so I'm going to get that stuff out to you guys as soon as I can. A lot of stuff planned there. I think I'll be able to get out anywhere from 4 to 6 more practice battles before I start covering that tournament footage, and then we'll see what's basically left after that. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you guys are ready to try a Wigglytuff for yourself. I think it's really fun to use and definitely a good addition on your team. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like. Go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know how you're actually liking Wigglytuff. If you guys have any tournaments where Wigglytuff has made an appearance, please feel free to share it. I would love to see those tournament links. Also, if you could give me a subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate that as well. I'm going to link a few things in the description as well, like the infographic that I used earlier on. I'm also going to link a Reddit write-up that I'm going to do for the showcase, sort of like a companion piece. So stay on the lookout for that if you want to get a little bit more information. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'm going to sign off for now. Look out for those practice battles again. I don't know if I've uploaded them before or after. Take care for now.